Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon, testimonies from reverts and converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is Leonardo Defilippis, who works for St. Luke Productions, president and founder of St. Luke Productions, to be specific. Got to tell you his bio here. After years as a Shakespearean actor, Leonardo Defilippis embarked on a spiritual journey that led him to found Catholic theater company St. Luke Productions in 1980. Millions throughout the US, Canada, and Europe have seen his work as an actor, producer, and film director. Performance venues span a wide and diverse spectrum. They have included churches, major theaters, civic centers, penitentiaries, schools, and cloistered convents. Leonardo also performed at World Youth Day in Denver and Rome. His work has inspired vocations to the religious life, and he has won numerous awards over the decades. I'm going to keep going because this is just so cool to me. One of his most ambitious projects was the direction, production, and distribution of the feature film Therese. This was the first motion picture distributed solely by an independent Catholic film company. Leonardo can be heard daily on Benedictus Moments. This radio and web series based on the profound meditations of Pope Benedict XVI airs on Catholic radio networks nationwide. He continues to tour with Vianney and Maximilian, Saint of Auschwitz. On August 6th, 1983, on the Feast of the Transfiguration, Leonardo married his beloved wife, Patty. She will be the next person that I interview. So I'm looking forward to that. They have been blessed with 7 children and reside in Washington State. Leonardo, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much, Eddie. This is great.
Yeah, I love reading that bio because it shows, as I mentioned, maybe that was in our prayer beforehand, just doing something, doing it well for decades. Maybe we start there. Maybe we start there just for a moment. Do you ever wake up and say, how the heck have we had the energy to do this production company for so long?
Yes, it's been a long time. It's amazing. 44 years of doing this. And it's really been a miracle, really. But there's been a lot of hardships and challenges, as you can imagine, in any kind of ministry. But when you're doing the arts, it's so much more risky because you don't know if each show will, or each drama or film will succeed or even come to light. So I look at it and I think, how did I ever end up saying yes to this and then sticking with it? And I think what's kept me going is, I see there's in me, I guess, God has kind of called me to be an evangelist in this way and to try to really dedicate my life to creating works of truth and beauty. And particularly in the live area, we do films, of course, and electronic things for radios and social media, etc. through the years when they were invented, that is. But weren't invented then when we started. But I find that what's kept me going really is the live performances, because they are face-to-face experiences. They're not,
Yes.
You're a participant, not a spectator, as you would be in a movie or something else. You're actually face-to-face. And so that's been an incredible experience through the years, to be able to do that for people of all ages, all types, different denominations throughout our long history, and to meet some incredible people within the church throughout the world, really.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So how did we're going to get to the point where you responded to that call. How did it all begin with your religious journey? Or sometimes when I say religious journey, that doesn't necessarily include childhood, but I'd love to go back to your childhood and maybe you could discuss what that was like for you.
Well, I think, it's obvious that I look a little older than you, Eddie. So I think what it is I come in a bridge between, before Vatican II. So I'm young, right? I'm an altar boy in the Latin Mass, etc. And then the church changes, and all of a sudden we go to the vernacular, to English.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at that point where when I grew up, I grew up in the Napa Valley, California, and I thought that every priest.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I come from a wine a wine history of my.
Sorry, Leonardo. I got excited because I lived there for 10 years. I was in the industry for 10 years. So
You're kidding me.
we lived in Napa. Yeah, that's
You
where I
did
met
in
my wife.
Napa?
That's where I
You're
met my
kidding
wife.
me.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So my grandfather helped start the Behringers, and then we worked at Charles Krug, and we have.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sorry, my grandfather did Beaulieu. Sorry,
Okay. Yep.
where Coppola is now.
Yep.
Francis Ford Coppola bought all that. But anyway, yeah, my dad grew up in Rutherford, and I'm born in St. Helena. Grew up in St. Helena, moved
What?
to the big metropolis of Napa, and
Yep.
so I'm from that whole region. And my dad was a butter, and all my uncles worked in the wine industry.
Incredible.
So
Yeah, three of my kids were born in St. Helena. So,
you're, yeah, yep, that's where I was born and raised, and my first 8, 9 years there, and then
yeah.
and then everything started because I went to there was St. Apollinaris, the first Catholic school. It was the second Catholic school actually, and so I was, it just started. I was at what was called Justin High School, which was
Yep.
just boys. So I was a senior for 4 years. So we were the original school, 50 guys becoming graduates. So I grew up there, and yeah, I mean, yeah. So I'm familiar with the wine industry to a certain degree. I mean, I don't
Sure.
make wine, but
Yeah. Sorry,
so
I had to say that. I
that's
had
you can edit all that if you need to.
No, no, no. I love it. I love actually seeing that type of connection. So you were saying that you were around the churches changing, the vernacular
Yeah,
obviously
well, I
shifting
was,
to English.
I was doing all that, and then we had the Irish priests. Then every priest in the valley, Napa Valley, they were all Irish. So I thought every priest had a brogue, and at that time we had the Sisters of Mercy. They're no longer there now, but every one of them was right from. They came off the boat and came to Napa Valley,
Yeah,
and so we were taught Irish jig and everything back in those days. And so I grew up that way. But what was beautiful about it is, especially I look back the formation, the priests and we had pastors in Rutherford and Yountville. We had all these little tiny towns, and we were very active with the church in that sense. But also, the nuns. I look back, they really taught us the faith. They really made us pray a lot. We had all the processions, all the things that are kind of coming back now, if you were to say, back into the more, if you say, rediscovering a lot of the traditions. And so, anyway, after the change, there was a lot of change. And after that, with Vatican II coming, so there was a lot of confusion. More people started to think different ways. And we know the history. A lot of your viewers will know all of that kind of history. So I started to lose the faith later on in high school primarily, which happens quite often, even in a Catholic school, because there was a lot of change and controversy going on at the same time, even though we were taught by the Christian brothers at that time and some lay teachers, etc. So I started to, get disillusioned about going to church and all of that kind of thing. Even though I'm the oldest of 5 children, even though our parents tried to teach us the faith and do all those things. Then I went off to college, and I started to again not practice the faith. Here I am, not what it really wanted. I want to be on my own now.
yeah.
It's a typical thing where a young person has to discover their own faith that they've been given by their family. And so I think all those tests were starting to happen. And then I got interested in the theater, a great formation for conservative and orthodoxy
Oh,
and the beauty of the loving the Catholic faith. So I started to discover the theater, and you got all these actors. Of course, we're a motley crew, and so I just got interested in that. However, I went to Rome for a year abroad,
yeah.
uh, left the theater there and all of that, and then I got exposed to even a wider culture, the beauty of art, living in Rome and Florence, and the beauty of the opera and music and the paintings and the frescoes, and I just loved it. And so I thought maybe I should be a painter, And so, but then I came back. I was an English major, just barely getting through my courses because I took too many other courses. So I had to eventually settle down and
Get a degree.
graduate. I had to try to graduate. So anyway, I finally graduated, and then I was in some more plays, and then I went to San Francisco, and I started doing work there, and I paid off my debts and everything, and in Napa Valley previous, so I could be an actor because I knew I wouldn't make too much money as an actor when you're starting out. You're not a star right away.
Yeah.
And, I forget how old I must have been, 21, 22, something like that. And so I went to San Francisco, and I just was working, painting. I did workshops, I did dancing, I did, I did mime back when there was a famous mime, Robert Shields, and back in those days. But anyway, I started to just explore all the arts. I loved it. I was reading, going to the ballet, all these type of things. But I wasn't really going to church. I had kind of, slowly, habitually lost my way in the church part, but I was very engulfed in the theater. So then I got a job at a repertory company, and then now I'm surrounded by all kinds of actors, and women and men.
This is still in San Francisco?
This is now in Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa at that time had a repertory theater. I don't even know if they have it anymore. It was a summer rep and would be all summer.
Okay.
And they do musicals and plays and all those kind of things. So people came from, upper above San Francisco, and all came to the shows. So that was kind of a stop. That was a start for me. And then I got a job at the Old Globe Theater, and down in San Diego, which is one of the larger Shakespeare companies in the United States. And so I went there, and then I got exposed to all kinds of other actors. And now I was in a realm of, now we're dealing with, everything from homosexuality to lesbians. I don't think we called them lesbians back then. What's a different name?
Sure.
But anyway, there's a whole nother core that I wasn't exposed to much when I was there, except I forget, I was in San Francisco.
Sure.
So so I was exposed a lot there when I was there, but then I went into theater. So I think more and more I started to kind of wrestle myself with who am I? What am I going to do? Because there's all kinds of temptations, either, heterosexual, homosexual, all these different things I was being exposed to. So it was kind of a turbulent time. And yet I look back and say, what was the anchor that God was using to hold on to me? And that was my anchor in my love for the arts, my dedication to the work, meaning in this case to Shakespeare. So I really was disciplined to try to really do the best I could in that art. And one of the beautiful things about back then, I look back, and this is not true today, and we'll get to that part, current culture, but you'd have people from all various types of persuasions, and all of us, even though they have sexual things or political ideas or whatever, but we all work together to support the beauty and the work of a Shakespearean play.
Mm.
So there was a commitment to that. You kind of put aside some of your other whatever you thought, and you had you kind of had that idealism that this was great literature. This is a great master. And so we were going to be obedient to him and try to do the best we could. Now, did we succeed all the time? No. There was always a flop, there was a turkey, or there's somebody. There was never, it's very hard in theater to have a great ensemble where everyone is great.
Mm.
We're in Broadway, a lot of times, even the smaller actors are really talented, So, but anyway, because you're dealing with something so subjective, you have Shakespeare. So we did a lot of classical theater there. And during that time, I was kind of trying to figure out, who am I? What am I going to do? I'm living in a very poor situation too. We're getting paid very little, but doing all this work, which we are dedicated to. And then, to make a long story short, I eventually, first of all, I met this I had a good friend who was a homosexual. And he's passed away since then. But he was a great soul, really, but had a terrible past. And so we became friends, and I really cared about him. And so we had this relationship in terms of friendship, I was trying to support him. He was always encouraging me in my walk, very honest and, in terms of his troubles, etc. Somebody to pour his heart out to, right?
Sure.
And but then what happened was he said, he called me Leo at that time. He said, uh, I have this, he was Catholic. He grew up Catholic, but in a broken kind of situation, like so many people, and had been abused and all this
Ah,
other, which causes a lot of these people, I mean, a lot of, those tendencies, homosexual or even on the other side, the heterosexual, if you've been abused, a lot of times you go another way
sure.
and you become promiscuous. And so that was his situation. So, I was concerned about that. But one day he says, Leo, I want to give you this. I don't think I deserve it. And it was his rosary from his childhood. And and I hadn't been praying the rosary. I hadn't been doing any of that. And I said, no, no, you should keep it to me. And so but he said, no, no, you need it. You deserve it. And so, okay, I'll take it. Okay. So I took it. And then I just put it in a drawer or wherever, if I had a drawer back then, I'm not sure. And then, so I put it, maybe it's under the underwear drawer, the t-shirt drawer. I'm not sure
You
where I
put it
put
in
it.
your Shakespearean cap. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it in my Shakespearean hat. Yeah, take it out of my feather. Yeah, but anyway, I put it on my sword. No, I didn't have it on my sword. But anyway, my halberd, But anyway, he gave me this, and I kind of forgot about it. And he went off to another job, and I was in the company doing Shakespeare and all of that. Then I met this young woman who was a dancer, and I was attracted to her. Pretty beautiful young gal, and so we got to become friends. But as we became more friends in terms of sharing and everything, she again, I don't know why, but people would share with me they felt trusted, I guess, to talk to me at that time. And so she started sharing me, and drug problems. She probably had been abused. She had had an abortion. So she shared this, and I could see that she was really having a hard time. So, and especially with the drugs too. So I started to think, well, how can I help her? I'm kind of empathetic at that point. And so I'm thinking, well, I'll look at social services. I'm trying. Back then, you went to the library. They actually you looked at a book. There's no internet. There's nothing like that. So,
A
so I
physical book? Are you kidding me?
physical book. Yeah, where's a physical book? Yeah, here's one. If no one has ever seen a book like.
I have a few behind me.
Yeah, you have a few. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Now, rather than this, not this thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we'll put that down for now. That's another discussion. But anyway, I started to research all of this, and I saw how complicated it was for with therapists and all these other things like that, right? Which is the common course in so many cases. So, but then one day, I refound this rosary and I found it, and it came to me in kind of a vulnerable moment. I guess I was becoming a little more, I guess, anxious, desperate to help her. What are we going to do? What am I going to do? And then anyway, I picked up this rosary, and I kind of forgotten how to pray it. So I took this rosary, and I still have a rosary to this day. It's all worn out and beat up and everything, but I started to pray just one Hail Mary. And then that led over the course of praying the whole rosary. So I started praying the whole rosary for her. Now, at the same time, now I'm being drawn back to God. So I really truly credit the Blessed Mother for bringing me back into the faith. Now, I didn't go back right away to all the sacraments. I can remember a time where now you're feeling, oh my gosh, I'm getting religion. I'm getting
Sure.
religious. I'm feeling spiritual things. So I went into this church. I remember no one was in it. And I hid in the back, like I didn't want anybody to see me. They might know, but nobody knows who I am anyway. So I'm a young guy. I'm in the back of the church and I'm just pouring myself out to God. Oh, God, what are you doing to me? You're making me come, And what do you want? Me to be a priest? Oh, I can't become a priest. Here I'm not even going to the sacraments or anything. And so I'm saying this dialogue, and all of a sudden this little boy opens the door, comes in. I would say he's about 10 years old, and he just walks right up to the sanctuary, where I think there was an altar rail there, and he knelt down. Rather than in the pew, he went right up to the front. And when he came in, I kind of ducked down so he wouldn't see me. And so then he starts praying. I could see he just stays still. And to me, he stayed still for about 10 minutes. And I was going, does a 10-year-old boy stay still for 10 minutes at a church?
Yeah.
Who is this boy? And so then I started, and then he got up, genuflected, and walked out. And then I thinking, who was that? All I look back now and thinking, maybe that was an angel. Maybe it was definitely a sign for me that, unless you become like a little child, you should
Yeah.
not enter the kingdom of God. So I was so struck by that then I started to go back to church, not to confession. I didn't take communion, but I started to go back to church, kind of surrounding myself, and eventually went to confession. And then, because I was afraid of confession at
Sure.
that time, after having been gone so long.
Yeah. You're,
So, yeah. So I came back I started coming back to the Eucharist, back to the sacraments. So that was a huge change for me. And here I'm in the theater, still acting, going into this kind of chaotic, academic, artistic, but in some ways immoral situations that I
sure.
was, in. So after that, I I went. I can remember I got involved in. There was this is I always tell the story. God said, "Okay, you're going to church. I want you to get in the donut line. I want you to get in the line after mass." And I said, "I don't know anybody. I don't want to get in the line. I don't know. Who am I going to talk to?" And so I could feel God telling me, "Okay, get in the line." And you just start talking to complete strangers. But because I did that, I met these people, and then they eventually invited me to a prayer group. Now,
Mm.
back then, the charismatic movement was big. It was this is you're talking now the 70s, if you can remember that, Eddie, the
Oh,
70s.
I've
Yes,
heard
you
I've
are
heard many
awake.
stories about it.
Yes, many stories.
I've been to
But
many
anyway,
museums that
they're the
feature the
glorious
70s.
decades, right? So anyway, I went to charismatic, but what was neat about them is they did missions to Tijuana, to the poor, etc. And but they had a table of books, and they had books on the saints and all kinds of prayer books, etc. So I became voracious in reading. So I started borrowing the book, reading, and then eventually I couldn't go to them anymore because I had to perform at night. This was during rehearsals and when I did a lot of school shows too, and then I went back to the big professional company. But anyway, that got me kickstarted, and I started exploring those. And I can remember, I don't know what drew me. I started reading all kinds of, different books, different philosophers, and I even went down. I think I went down. They had the Pauline sisters had a religious store,
Mm.
selling religious goods. I went down and bought a book on John of the Cross, the complete works, you know, and I start to read it and I'm so confused and I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm not at that spiritual. I'm still like, as St. Paul would say, I just eat a little bit of milk. I can't
Yeah.
eat any meat, no vegetables, no fruits, nothing. So here I am. So I was kind of idealistic, ambitious, but didn't really know. I didn't have a guide. I didn't have anybody, no spiritual director or anything of that nature. So God, the Blessed Mother they had to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So then that changed my life. That whole situation. Now I'm in the theater and I have to give up a lot of things. I've got to, I'm starting to, got to change your language because you naturally, when you're in situations, you're in the peer pressure, you're in that milieu that
Sure.
you're in, you act like everybody else.
Yep.
And so, because you want to talk the talk or seem
You
like
don't want
you're,
to stand out. You just want
you
to
want
fit
to stand out.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. And, in theater, we all have vanity and everything, but the thing about theater, which is different, is you have to sell yourself. You sell yourself to get a job and things of that nature, but you're always having to try to prove yourself so that maybe you'll be discovered, maybe
Sure. You got to
maybe
have
you'll
just the right headshot, and you got to have the right pose and the right words and the right resume. Yeah, I get
you
that.
got to practice, you got to dance, you got to sing, you got to speak. You got Anyway, so I started to, just try to be a better example and to all those people. And there was a lot of beauty that came from that, people, different people, because I was with all kinds of people that were going all different ways. And I was in, which is interesting because a lot of people would look at actors today and we go, oh my gosh, what a hopeless group. They hate the church, they hate this and that. And then and they're very vocal about things because they're wounded and they've been hurt in so many different ways. And so I was trying to, in a sense, minister, to be a quiet example. Not, I wasn't like a St. Paul coming out,
Guns
they were
blazing.
starting the rehearsal and I come out and say, repent, everyone. I couldn't, I didn't. The
Yeah.
kingdom of God is at hand. I could have done that, but I would have been fired.
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of did all that, Eddie, and then I had I started. Then I got some other jobs, and I actually, in a sense, I took a break. I went to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is which was and well, it was back then the largest Shakespearean festival in the United States. So it's the biggest, have the most people come, et cetera. It's kind of like the one in Ontario, Stratford and Ontario in Canada. It's a big three theaters
Mm.
all in the complex, and 500,000-600,000 people come every year,
Wow.
type of thing. So it was a major draw, and that was, if you know where you probably know where it is, in Ashland, Oregon, between the border of California and Oregon. So, and a lot of people came there. So I got a job there, and in that sense, that was good because when I went there, I started to change my life, continued to change my life, meaning discipline my life. Okay, I'm not going to go to parties at night. I'm going to study during the day, do the rehearsals, and then do the shows. And I started going to mass every day. I did have no car, so I had to take a bicycle or a walk. So I did that every day, and so it was a marvelous time, really. Reading, I would say, okay, you're going to read the scriptures for an hour now. Now you're going to do this. Now you're going to read this book on the saints. I kind of did this discipline to myself. I did one semester, so to speak. If I say it's semester, I said, okay, I'm not going to see anybody. I'm just going to stay in my little cell, and I'm going to be more in a solitude mode.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reach out. Then the next semester, I said, well, maybe I should speak to people and try to help them. So then you all of a sudden I go to mass every day, and of course, who goes to mass every day? All these elderly people, and I'm only the young buck in the going to mass. So all of a sudden I'm befriending them. They're lonely. I'm helping them. Then I'm watching their houses, staying. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I trying to support, start a pro-life table and all this kind of things that I was getting myself involved in. So it was that journey there helped me prepare me. And in fact, we started a Bible study at the theater. And that was significant because I don't know if that had ever happened
Well, you
before.
say we. Who else was involved?
Well, I was the only Catholic,
Okay.
but there was other Protestants. And so, but still, again, that taught me, if you want to say, I was already in an ecumenical situation. I'm
Yep.
with Jews and Greeks, and so to speak, and all kinds of people, but that brought dialogue, and then I could introduce to them, Catholicism in my own little way. What feast was today, what was, different parts of Scripture, what Catholicism could provide. And then I got so enthusiastic, I started to say, okay, we're going to evangelize. So I started talking to people in the theater more. And eventually I was taking all these women, I would take them, we'd listen to Fulton Sheen tapes, his old tapes, and we listened to those, and then we discussed them, and everything. And then eventually I was trying to bring them to Mass. And, I think one of them she became a Catholic. and then eventually another. She became, I think, a Protestant minister actually, and then but then I was doing all of this, and then of course the next year my wife Patty, my future wife, comes in. She comes into the company. She's not Catholic. She's you'll find out. I won't tell her
Yeah, don't.
I won't say anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, but at the same time, I invite her to this situation too. But what happens is I have a lot of these people asking for prayers. Now they're coming to me, Leo, could you pray for me? Leonardo, could you pray for me? People who had really tough things going on in their lives, in terms of things that have happened to them, divorced and all kinds of issues. So, so it drew me, deeper into the faith. And that's in those final years, I decided I wanted to do something spiritual rather than just the secular theater. And that's when I was looking around and watching things. And there was a man who had done a one-man show on the Iliad. And so, one of the Greek classics.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, that's fascinating. And then I found out a man had done, actually, a woman had written a play on St. Damien the leper, from Molokai.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was the first one-man show on a Catholic future saint. He wasn't canonized. And that was written I believe in the early 70s or the late 60s. And eventually that ended up going on PBS, believe it or not.
No kidding.
Wow. And that wouldn't happen today,
No.
But, not at all. But that really, I went and saw that specially, and that really inspired me. And then there was an actor called Sir Alec McCowan, who was a famous English actor. He was knighted and all that kind of stuff. He decided to do a one-man show on the Gospel of Mark. And that there said, oh, so he started a genre of one-man shows on that. And that was not common at all. I think if I were to say, he's more the pioneer of doing that. He did it with a sports coat and just he had memorized the gospel and kind of did what you call a dramatic reading, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And then so then I was thinking, well, what could I do? And then at that time, nobody had done. There was a man who did Matthew after the Mark one, but then it didn't last at all. And then nobody had ever done John, and nobody had ever done Luke. So I would never touch John because I would think, oh my gosh, that's dangerous. That looks dangerous. So then I did Luke because I loved the Gospel of Luke, and I decided I'll start with the Gospel of Luke. And that's why we're called St. Luke Productions. So I did the first 6 chapters of Luke, all the way from the very beginning through the genealogy. If you know
yeah.
Do you know what the genealogy is?
Well, I just took Jesus and the Gospels in college, so yeah.
Well, you better.
Yeah.
That's good. So then eventually I went to the Beatitudes, and it was an hour show, and I memorized it. But my touch, different than the others, was since my Shakespearean background, I wanted costume, I wanted some props, I wanted original music to back it up. And so that's what I did. I'm with all these artists. So I convinced somebody to write the music. So a small orchestra to play the different musicians.
That's incredible.
And I had a friend of mine who was a costumer at the Shakespeare Festival, who eventually goes on to the Metropolitan Opera through the history, and she's done all our costumes for 40 years. But anyway, and then I took off, and we started to travel, and I went to every I decided every denomination.
Yep.
Well, I wrote everybody. And having been in Napa Valley too, when I had to try to do a show there, I would write even the Mormons. I said, maybe they want the gospel too. Of course, I didn't know as much about the Mormons then.
This is all early 80s. You're
talking 1980. Yeah, 81. I went to places. What was amazing, here I am in major theater, I'm in a big theater, and now I'm going to villages, literally little tiny towns, I would go to a tiny church and in that little town. And I would go to the major city. I would go, and then I started to go to, I would go to every denomination I can think of. I started befriending all the Presbyterians, and then I went to their conference and performed. And then I started doing prisons. I was performing, at the penitentiary I'm with murderers and rapists, and then I'm with the correctional, and then I'm with women. That was kind of hard because when you're performing for the women look just like other women, but they've done some terrible things like
Yeah.
killing. So here I'm performing those shows for them. And then eventually, but the key also in this journey is when I was at the theater, uh, actually before I even start all this, I forgot that I heard about these monks at Mount Angel Abbey. Have you ever heard of Mount Angel
I
Abbey?
have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Oregon. And I read an article about, it was called the Fort. It was a building, and they did, all these monks were working in the arts to try to bring spirituality and the arts together. They were poets, and they were doing ceramics and sculpture and painting and things of that nature. And I got fascinated by it. So I took a bus and went to this monastery, and the guest master, picked me up at a train station, at a bus station, excuse me, took me there. I'd never been to a monastery like that. And anyway, I got to meet this wonderful. He's now the Abbot Jeremy Driscoll of the monastery now, but we were all young together, and I got in. They basically brought me in, and I found a spiritual home to see finally that somebody cared about the spiritual elements of the arts, which I could not find in my journey in the theater as much. So, and I got excited about that. And then I'm introduced to the Liturgy of the Hours because, of course, it's a monastery, and we do all the hours. So I got the beauty of that, the beauty of the written word, and the scriptures, and I got into contemplation more. I got befriended by I got introduced to the Trappist monks. So now I'm living in more silence. I would go on retreats constantly to discern my vocation and what I should do with my life. Should I start this? And then eventually that led me, the encouragement of this one monk. He said, I want you to get a play ready for, a family conference. Why don't you create something, Leonardo? And that was the Gospel of Luke that I just described earlier. And that led me to do that. Because at first I wanted to do St. Francis. I was very enamored by St. Francis of Assisi. And at that time, too, I got a relationship with Mother Teresa of Calcutta. What I did was she was kind of a hero,
Yeah.
she was discovered more in the late by Malcolm Muggeridge. He basically brought her into the world to be known, basically, with his famous film on her life. And so I got fascinated by her. And then I basically wrote her and said, this is what I'm trying to do, this play. And she said, why don't you do it? Yes, she encouraged me and wrote me. It's one of her famous lines. Do this for the poor, and also make it something beautiful for God. And so I wrote, she wrote me, and we weren't. And back in those days, I did everything with no money. And I mean, I had a donor actually. I came to talk to this woman about Catholicism and Shakespeare, and because Shakespeare has a lot of Catholic background in his family. And so, and then she said she had some money, and she said, "Oh, I'll help you put this play together." That's how I was able to put the play together.
Incredible.
And so she started me off, and Mother Teresa and I kept writing each other. I have these, type little things that she would do. I don't know how she did it all, but it's amazing that she would answer.
No,
And
no
and
kidding.
yeah, isn't that something? She was a beautiful soul, and so I watched her courage. She was a good example for me in trying to. At this point, I'm, wanting to live in poverty and chastity and obedience and
Obedience,
all
yeah.
that stuff, and preparing myself for, I think, the religious life, really. And John Paul II, too, when he was elected, when I was in the theater, that was a turning point too, because I said, what are you doing, God? That was a huge thing after what, 400 years of Italians, and all of a sudden
Yes.
chooses, a priest, a bishop, a cardinal from a communist country, and him being in his love for the theater. His dilemma was, should I be a priest or should I be an actor? And that's his story. And I started doing the same thing. I going, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be a priest or am I supposed to be called to be an actor? What should I do? You know, the priest seemed a little more sane to go in that direction, whereas in the theater, how am I going to do that? Because you're with all these crazy.
Well, didn't Pope John Paul II, didn't he help put together a list of the top films, the top
Well, that
productions,
was the
or I
Vatican,
mean Vatican, but I
the
thought
Vatican
he
list.
had
Yeah,
something to do with
I
that
don't know.
because he
He may have
appreciated
maybe
the
have
arts so much.
he may have started that, but he had a great love for the arts. He wrote, of course, the letter to the artist, the major letter that he did,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I would read that all the time, and so he was a huge inspiration. So fortunately, I got to eventually, I started. Then I did the Passion of Luke. Another priest, that priest, I finished doing the Gospel of Luke, and I didn't know what to do. What do I do now with my life?
Yeah.
And because I didn't know if I could continue this. I never thought I could do it in my life. Could I memorize that much, whatever? And then anyway, he got me to do the second show, and that led me to people, the Franciscans, seeing what I did, and then they wanted me to do to create a show on St. Francis of Assisi for the 800th anniversary of his birth,
Whoa.
and that was in 1982. And you remember it very well, I'm sure.
I do very well.
Yes, yes, it was fantastic here.
Yeah.
But anyway, I ended up researching that, and I didn't know how to do it, but the Franciscans really supported me to, and so we created a show on St. Francis of Assisi, and I then performed that all over the country, and I continue to do that even for all different denominations, because a lot of our Protestant brothers and sisters, they love St. Francis
Yeah,
of Assisi.
that's
They
right.
may not understand his deep spirituality and his connection to the church, etc., but they loved him for what he was, and I think that's where Mother Teresa came in too. She was truly a Franciscan spirit in
Yes.
that regard, besides the Theresian spirit. But so that was a huge. Those movements started to happen in my life, where I started to people started to see me, and I did another thing which was very unusual. I may be the first to do it. I have no idea, but I certainly I wrote a Carmelite monastery. Maybe when I would look at a Catholic directory and say, "I'll write everybody." You got the poorhouse, you got the cathedral, you got the colleges, you got the high schools, the grade schools.
You
I'll
did it
do it
all.
for all of them, because I
Yeah.
was on fire to evangelize, because no one knew. When I got down to it, I didn't know the scriptures well, nor did anyone know the saints very well. And the one thing, when you do a show of the scriptures, it's not like you're in the Bible type of situation like Father Mike Schmidt. You're
Yeah.
actually doing a continuous flow in one experience. So you get a sense of how it's connected all together, and and that was the challenge. Can the gospel be a drama? Is it just a work to be read?
Yeah.
And I found out that it can be a drama. So I to bring it to life,
Yeah.
basically. So that was a profound experience for me, to be able to see how people reacted, and the different denominations, and I went to. I mean, I look back, and I still do this too, really. But back then, I went to such a variety. I went to, if you want to say it, to the right, to the left, to the liberal, to the
Everywhere.
conservative. I mean, I went all kinds of,
And that's key for evangelization. So you nailed it.
exactly.
Now, what about, do you remember some of the responses from people being moved by these? I mean, that had to have been a really good moment for you, I would assume, to have people come up to you and say, that made me think about the gospel in a different way, or I need to go to church, or do you have any? Can you think of any of
Oh,
those comments?
many, many,
Yeah,
many, countless numbers. I mean, that's not just with that was with the Gospels. Oh, yes. I mean, I have people, I remember people would come out of a show and they'd ask me, I'm being attacked by the devil. Could you pray over me? I'd have, all kinds of situations. You're right. People would come back to the church. People are disturbed
yeah,
what they heard, or St. Francis. I mean, that was very touching. The love that people would have. I remember a person. She brought her blind mother, and they were crying after the show, and I said why, and she said the mother couldn't talk, but the mother, she was kind of dumbfounded, but the daughter says, my mother saw the show. She saw you moving around, saw the show. And I'm going, oh my gosh, God allowed her to see St. Francis. And so I've had many experiences of, if I went, eventually we go on to do the Gospel of John,
yeah.
uh, which was probably maybe one of my most difficult works ever, but that was hugely profound. It touched the lives of so many people. I mean, one would be Father Michael Gately. He saw that show and that kind of really changed the course of his life when he saw that show, and then eventually he bought the CD of it when we eventually created that. But I just think of all the people it's touched in different ways. Now it's not me who's touching them.
Yeah,
Sometimes any actor or any religious speaker, or we have tons of them. Obviously, you're dealing with them all the time too, and many of them. But you can go in that sense of vanity a lot. I'm selling my books, I'm doing
sure.
this, I'm on television, I'm on radio, I'm on Fox News or whatever it is. And yet you can get tempted to think, oh, I did that. I'm pretty good. But God is the one who does it. I'm kind of like an old workhorse. I'm used to the discipline of theater. I mean, the stage manager would get tired working with me because I would do so many shows. But I didn't, I would, but in the end, it wasn't me just being a great athlete, so to speak. It was God allowing me to
Yes.
survive through injuries, sickness. I remember doing a show on St. Augustine, the Confessions of St. Augustine, and we had 400 people in this little town in the Diocese of Spokane. I think it was Ephrata, it's called, for those who might know their geography out there. But anyway, there's 400 people. I have the flu. I am so sick. I just had thrown up, and at this point, my wife, Patty, and my stage man, you cannot go out. You have to cancel the show. You got to cancel the show. And I said, no, no. And there's 400 people here. And so I get up, and I mean, the Confessions is a very difficult work.
I can only imagine.
It's
The minute you said that, it's so.
the language is almost higher than Shakespeare. It's very complex.
Yep.
Of course, I don't do the whole book, obviously, or everyone would be they'd fall asleep. I do the I
You'd be
do the
there for
real
a month. Yeah.
We'd be there a month. We'd be discussing the meaning of memory and everything. But anyway, I walk out onto the stage and I start the performance, and I'm feeling, like I got the energy, I can do it, I'll make it through, like Michael Jordan doing the
I,
game with the
I was
flu.
just that anytime
And
you say
so,
someone's going to go forward with the flu, I think of Jordan. So,
yeah,
yeah,
I know, but this was a little different because I think
different.
I had worse flu than Jordan because eventually I start to black out. You don't play basketball when you're going to black out.
No.
So I start to, you ever had that thing where you're gonna faint. And so I sit down. I'm still doing the lines. I don't know how I'm doing it. I'm not. God was just took over, and I'm there. I'm sweating. I'm perspiring. My eyes are probably. I'm leaning one way, leaning another, and people are going, "Wow, he's into it.
He is so into
He is
He's on the
wow.
verge of
He
blacking out.
on cue can perspire. He can weep. Somehow by God's grace, I have no idea. Imagine you're doing Shakespeare or anything. Of course, this is the Confessions, and I got through it, and so people are so moved, and yet I'm so sick. And then after the show, I collapse, completely collapse, faint. So I've had so many amazing experiences, like you mentioned. I mean, people coming back to the church. I remember one time we were doing St. John Vianney, and we were exhausted. We had done about 11 shows in a row, and it's such a hard show. And we went into do to the Adoration Chapel, and we just prayed, that because John Vianney was famous for saying the devil always attacked him and said, but John Vianney says, oh, when the devil attacks, that means there's going to be a big fish. We're going to catch a big fish today, because because he's the priest of
Yeah.
confessions.
Yep.
So, and lo and behold, we prayed that somehow in our weakness, and the man came back to the church that night. So, I mean, people, young men have gone into the seminary. I think some of the moving things are when you come back doing a show like St. Maximilian Kolbe, and you're performing, and you are after the show, you're walking down the aisle, say if it's in a church or in a theater, and you see a priest just weeping uncontrollably, where his body is shaking because he's so moved. I mean, I've had so many experiences like that. You just see the power of the saints, the power of the Holy Spirit, you know, and probably, and also for me, I mean, there's so much to talk about. I don't know if I'm going off the ramp here,
No,
but,
this is exactly
performing
what I wanted
for,
to hear. So
yeah,
go ahead.
performing, say, Maximilian Kolbe, because he's a modern saint, right? I performed for actual people who were with him in Auschwitz in the lineup. So I performed for the survivors in Auschwitz that knew him before, and I performed before they died. And even Mr. Gajowniczek, who the man he gave his life for, gave me a plaque in honor of me doing this, and he signed it and everything. And I think, but all the POWs from World War II that survived, the
Oh,
Korean Wars, Vietnam,
oh,
all these people who were, and then all the communists, all the people who had to endure under Soviet Union, under Castro. When you're doing a performance and you have somebody who's weeping, who had to hide from the Nazis, and they're weeping throughout the whole show, you're, and I can't weep with them. I have to do the show. You realize the power, the immense power of these saints, and then of course we did I created the female saints too. I meaning the shows for them on Saint Therese and Saint Faustina, and of course they were powerful to see what that did. I mean the little miracles that happened just with Saint Therese. Of course, she's a miracle worker.
yeah.
How that led people to deep spirituality, and I joined forces. All these shows I created are related to the different orders. If it's John of the Cross, which I did, or Saint Therese, the Carmelites got a hold of me. It's very hard when you perform for cloistered nuns, and you got about 19 nuns, and then the Mother Superior. There you have the grid. Have a speak room, and I'm thanking them. I just did say a show on the Gospel of John for them, or Saint Augustine, and then they look at me and go, Leonardo, we want you to do a show on John of the Cross, and here's a little envelope to get you started, some money. And I'm going, Mother, how am I going to do a show on John of the Cross? That seems impossible.
Yeah.
And she just looks and, you're going to do it. Okay. Okay, Mother. You're at that point. How can you say no to Mother? So those kind of experience happened a lot to me.
Well, I was going to say you were at that point, you were clearly ready for meat because initially you said with St. John of the Cross, you needed milk at that time. And if she's,
I did. I couldn't, and that decades later, then I do, and that here I am doing it, and it's the only show. Each show we did, except for maybe St. Francis, because there was other shows, but each one we did was the only show of its kind in the world. So I do a show on Maximilian. It's the only show like it. I do a show on Maximilian Kolbe, or a show on Saint John Vianney. The only show when we did that for the 150th anniversary of his death, which was the year of the priest. It was the only show in the world. So I did 150 shows in one season, so that, for 80,000 people. So it was, I don't know how I lived. I mean, I was sick half the time,
oh,
but then then it didn't matter because John Vianney was sick all the time anyway.
Well, there you go.
There
There
you
you
go.
go.
So yeah, so all these saints have really, I guess if we were to say in reversion back to the faith, they've helped me deepen my faith, uh, and to try to share that with others. Because the saints, as we call them, Jesus is the gospel, he's the word, right? And by tradition we call the saints the living gospels. They continue the legacy. You shall do greater things than I. In other words, he makes them do the miracles. He makes them continue his legacy, his heritage, his history, his living history that continues today. The resurrection continues. So it's been a marvelous experience. It hasn't been easy. Of course, we've had a lot of hardships and challenges
Yeah,
through the years to do this because it's very risky what we do in terms of the kind of work that
of
it
course.
is.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the saints. So the audio rosary that you all did, specifically the wisdom of the saints, I could not recommend that more. That is one of the most powerful for me. Um, it's an incredible experience to hear the different quotes from various saints as they reflect on the mysteries of the rosary. That was incredible. I just wanted to mention that. Also, who's next? Do you have what else do you have in the pipeline? Have you done Saint Teresa of Avila? Have you written anything about her
Well, we
life?
did we did her in the sense that we did the movie on John of the Cross.
Okay.
We did a play and then a
Yeah.
movie. And what's happened is, in the electronic age during COVID, we put everything into the the digital realm. And because of that, all of a sudden, now the Carmelites in Africa are using it for formation. Then we
Yeah.
got it on YouTube eventually, and you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Formed, of course. But what happened because of YouTube, now it's the only show of its kind in the world on John of the Cross. So it's kind of like taking off. It's like people are having all kinds of spiritual experiences because it's such a spiritual type of work. It's based off his poetry, etc. Yeah. So in the pipeline, what's coming up? I guess we're going to. Hopefully, we can get another rosary for. We're going to do a major rosary on Our Lady of Guadalupe, and the reason is we're doing that is and in English and in Spanish, so that we can bring the two Americas together during
Wow.
these very difficult times in our country. So in a way, it's a spiritual offering as we have the other rosaries, on Amen app, and with you're the faith, you're mercy,
Yeah.
and we have the trust, hope, and trust, and the wisdom of the saints. But hopefully, we can do more spiritual works, reflections too on the saints. I'm praying that we can do for you. But also, we are trying to finish our movie on Father Tolton, who's the first. You can see behind me,
Yeah.
Father Tolton. He's the first recognized Black priest in the history of the United States, a former slave, and then becomes a priest. So we're trying to finish that, and that is going to be very significant because it'll be the first. It'll be the first major work, uh, artistic work. That is not. It's not a documentary uh, on Father Tolton, and I think it's going to be probably one of the more maybe you think of all the Black movies that have been done. I think it's going to be the most spiritual movie that so far has been done in culture on a Black person
Yeah.
that of faith, because he's on his track to become a saint. And then the other one we're working on is Heart of Mercy, which is based off our play on Saint Faustina, and that stars Maria Vargo, who's an incredible actress, but also it stars Jonathan Rumi of The Chosen, and we're the first to our performance, our film is, well, what it is it's based off our multimedia play, and we have footage, but we Jonathan, I hired him to do that part, the Jesus Divine Mercy, and that was his first time he'd ever done Jesus in his history.
Even before he did that early work with Dallas, is what you're saying.
Right. Oh
Yeah.
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 Well, I think the history goes, and he can correct me a little more, but I know that we were start because he's given me the emails that I did start it all. But the thing was that helped lead. I think I gave him some footage too, and then he could show that to Dallas. And they did another movie
That's
before
awesome.
The Chosen,
Yes.
and eventually that led to The Chosen. So yeah, it's interesting, because I know Jonathan a long time, and God bless him. I mean, he's having to do quite a thing. But anyway, that movie we're trying to finish, and it's our most complicated work, next to our movie on Saint Therese, which was a feature film, and that was in the movie theaters and everything. Where these next two go, I'm not sure, because we live in such a diverse entertainment world. Meaning, is it going to be streaming? Is it going to
Yeah.
go into the theaters? Of course, they're both going to be very unique, and probably they're very spiritual because they're based off the saints. And so they're going to be different, than say some of the other movies, like the recent movie on Cabrini, which shows more of the external part
Yeah.
of her life,
Yeah.
not her deep spirituality. But what we do in our ministry, of course, is it's most important. You always show the story. It has the external story, the
Sure.
drama, the conflict, and everything, the good and the bad. But we always do the internal spiritual voice of the saints. Their voice comes out, and that's what makes it rise to another level. In terms of a sacred work. So I'm praying that those can be supported and get out there, and then
No.
hopefully, we can train new people for the future to do what I'm doing and to assist the area that you're working in too, because I think it's important to have prayers, reflections. The more we can deepen our faith, there's so many avenues that need to be supported and
Yes.
fostered and to blossom, and whatever we can do to get away from the noise of our culture right now, because I think a lot of us are desperate to figure out what is the solution. But we have to have courage and we have to have hope. I mean, no, every saint that I perform, and even God Himself, because I perform God, I was God for an hour and a half or an hour. But I mean, even it was terrible and difficult then too. There's always persecution, there's always suffering, there's always the cross. And I think we have to accept that, because why does St. Paul says, I only boast of the cross of Jesus?
Yes.
Why? Why does he say that? Because that's the key to freedom, and that freedom will lead to resurrection, to the Eucharist, to the body of Christ, and then it also, I think that's what's so important, and it leads us then to the Mother of God and to the saints, because they're part of that body, the communion of saints, the communion of souls.
Well, I think it was on that rosary that I was referencing, St. John Vianney. I think one of the quotes was, you have to embrace your cross and you'll recognize that you're not holding it, it's holding you. That's not verbatim, but that
Right.
sticks with me. Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Absolutely
remember in
fantastic.
our play, Saint Philomena, we have her in the play version, but she is talking to him to not flee from the cross, because he was so persecuted by his own brethren, by his own Catholic parishioners,
Yeah.
and yet, eventually he converts them all. It's amazing to think a priest converting his entire parish. I mean,
Yeah.
entire parish goes to church, and then visitors come just to see this kind of holy place.
So
Imagine if we could do that.
if we could do that, oh my goodness.
If they could do that in Boise area, they could do that in Napa
If they could do it
Valley.
in Napa, yep.
If they could do it in Napa, that'd be a miracle. If they could do it in New York or Los Angeles to make it a holy place, I think that's what, California, of all the states, probably has the most beautiful names of cities, and yet no one knows what any of them means.
Wow.
And Sacramento. It means the name is actually Holy Sacrament. And Los Angeles, San Francisco,
Yeah.
all places. I mean, we take it for granted, but
Up and
these,
down. Yeah. We just,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I think that yeah, the faith is so important, and I think I pray that this talk that I gave this meandering going
No,
around here and
it's
there.
not
Will it
meandering.
be?
It's all connected to the original question, so I appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate it too.
Yeah. I want to ask one final
Yeah,
question going way back. The group that you were close with, you were saying that everyone had this unified purpose, this Shakespearean,
right.
respect for the work. When you kind of went your own way, did you stay in touch with those actors and actresses? And if so, were they curious about what it was that you were embarking on?
Yes, some of them didn't. They went, they still stayed in their lane, so to speak.
Sure.
There was, I remember, and I still pray for him. He was an actor and he saw what I was trying to do. And in fact, uh, I think that I was still in Ashland when I was started this ministry, and he came to me and said, "I really need your prayers." He had a drinking problem, and he was married actually to now she's a famous actress, but I don't want to mention her name.
Sure.
But they divorced, marriage problems, uh, an abortion involved in this whole situation, and he came to me one day and he was kind of depressed, and he just came to me. He was a big, rough and tumble type of guy, and just said, "I want you to pray for me." He told me what was on his heart, and shortly after that, he got drunk and he was driving and got killed.
Oh gosh.
So I still pray for him.
Yeah.
Pray for yeah. There's some actresses, they stayed in touch with me. In fact, what was really neat is my costumer, who she's not Catholic, but she stuck with me and did every one of my projects. She even did the movies we did. And she would do them when she was off season from her other jobs, and even when she was at the Metropolitan Opera for the last 20 years of her career, she would help us create our costumes. And I look back and I think, what a relationship
Incredible.
that did. So it's been a lot of those artists. Yeah, they some of them have obviously passed away, from those early days. But I still pray for them. A
Yeah.
lot of a lot of them have. Yeah, so it really, I think it's important because we see that with some of the actors today. Some of them are starting to. I'm very curious, when you see an actor, they start to, say they're trying to leave, if you want to say, the Hollywood scene,
Yeah.
or they want to go, they want to get their lives back together from the drinking and the drugs, etc., and the sex and all those kind of things. And I think I'm, or models, or, what do you say, porn stars or Playboy bunnies, or when they have a conversion
Yeah.
and they come back, not all of them make it because a lot of them commit suicide for obvious reasons. But that is it's a story of redemption, and a lot of us get afraid of people like that, or we're critical. But we have to remember Saint Mary Magdalene, not a good person,
Yeah.
not a good person. Had a bad life, scandalous, demons had to be cast out of her. But God saw what she could become.
That's right.
And no different than St. Paul, a
That's right.
murderer, a persecutor, a killer, an arrogant man. And yet, look what he did. So God can do anything with anyone. So that's why the worst people that we can think of, we should pray for them. We should pray for their deep, deep conversion. We have a lot of people to pray for,
Yeah, we do.
in our government and in the church. The church reflects a lot of times, unfortunately, our culture. It gets infected by it, and that's the way. That the Bible is that. It's the chosen people are constantly leaving God,
Yeah.
coming back, right? So
Yeah.
we're nothing's new under the sun. We're just
So true.
like the Jews of old, you know, if you were
We
to
are
say,
a stiff-necked people for sure.
we are a stiff-necked people. And
Yes.
we love the different molten calves, the golden calves or whatever, our idols. We have, so we get distracted, and Jesus has. So that's why I think the Mary Magdalene is a
Yeah.
great thing. So pray for the entertainment industry,
Agreed.
pray for them. That's why I think we're seeing a plethora of, we're seeing what Catholic radio and Catholic media, and you see the Augustine Institute and all the different things that have happened through the years. Even though it's a growing thing, that I'm praying that more things with the podcasts and all that. Maybe it's overused sometimes. Sometimes we've got to take a break sometimes and have a
Yeah.
a
Have
meal
our own
together.
retreats. We need to, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have to you have to tell them, okay, after the prayer, go sit with your family, talk to your wife, maybe sing a song to your kid before they go to bed or something of this nature.
Yeah.
Encourage your priest, thank him, say that was a great homily, even though it wasn't. You just try. You got to do. We have to do everything we do. All these electronic things, whatever, they have to be They have to make us jump to another level.
Yeah.
Even the smallest thing. So I think that's, unless you become like a little child, you should not enter the kingdom of
There
God.
you
We
go.
have to recreate that innocence.
That takes us all the way back to that 10-year-old that was
Yep.
kneeling. That was a big
That
moment
was
for
a
you.
huge,
That is an
that was a
incredible
huge,
part of the story. And
yeah,
yeah,
it
wow.
was, yeah, it was a
Wow. And,
very,
and it made me think of Augustine when you said you were sitting in the back pew and this boy comes in. I thought he was going to tell you, take and read.
well,
So,
that's in the story. You're correct.
yeah.
That's during that time where he has the big breakdown
Yeah.
and take and read, take up and read, take up
Take
and
up
read.
and read. Exactly.
Yeah. And and then that performance or that drama is very moving to me personally, because
Yeah.
it really shows the drama of a real conversion.
Well, the icon that I had for the first, whatever, 18 months, and it's even on my YouTube banner, it's the Fra Angelico painting, the conversion of St. Augustine. And he has his hands over his head, and Alypius is watching him. And anyway, I don't need to get into all of it, but that was a touching image when I was going through a reversion. And so anytime I hear the confessions spoken of, it's really, really endearing. So I appreciate
Oh
you
well,
sharing
so
that.
hopefully we can. I pray I can still do it. Well, hopefully I can come and do it in Boise for you.
Hey,
So
that
why
would be
not?
incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But
Well,
no, Augustine, it's so nice to hear somebody know who Alypius is. So that's
yeah, there
great.
you go.
For your audience,
There you
who
go.
is Alypius?
No, I had to geek out for a second there. So, Leonardo, thank you so much for sharing that wisdom, that the absolute determination, perseverance, the grace that God has given you to perform all these years. And like I said, I'm going to be talking to Patty. I look forward to that and wish you the very best as you continue with St. Luke Productions. So,
Well, I'm honored to speak to you, Eddie, and finally see you face to face,
yeah. What was that? What was the other thing?
so to speak.
So to speak.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
Our Zoom,
We'll take. Yeah.
We
We'll
can
take
take
it for
what
now.
we get, what we get, right? That's all we. One of these days. But listen, God bless your audience, and God bless all the efforts that are being done by all of you and your team and everything. So God bless you to keep up the good work and continue.
All right.
Continue to run the race to
There
the
you
end.
go. You too. God bless you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you
God
so much
bless.
for watching. Until next time, take care and God bless. Bye.